you guess the number one concern people have when I talk to them about their retirement? And this is over a 14-year career as a financial advisor. Can you guess? Maybe it's your concern too. Probably is. The biggest concern I get is, am I going to run out of money? That is it. That is the thing that everybody worries about. If you save for retirement and decide you want to retire at a certain time, whether it's early, whether it's later on in life, maybe you never really want to retire, but you just want to have financial freedom. Still, the biggest concern I get is, am I going to run out of money? And so today we're going to talk about that fear and give you a couple things that maybe you can do to guardrail against that. Now, obviously, I can't tell you for sure you won't run out of money. Does it happen to people? Yes, it does. People overspend, people don't save enough, people have unfortunate events that happen that make it so that they have to go through money really fast, like long-term care and other things like that that can be problems. So we'll go through all of that and try to give you a couple of action items you can take to help put some guardrails around it. Hopefully you will never be in that position of running out of money, and this video is here to help you never be in that position, hopefully, right? Obviously, this is not personal advice. I don't know your situation. Feel free to reach out and, make a get to know you call appointment with me. There's no obligation with that, and I can give you a little bit more personal advice, but for right now, this is going to be generic in that side of it. So, and if you wonder where I'm looking at my notes. So, here's the thing. A lot of people kind of do this and this when it comes to their retirement planning, right? They don't really want to look at the numbers. They don't really want to do a plan. They don't really want to see where they are before they get to retirement. And that's a problem, because if you don't know what the projection is, which really that's all financial planning is, right? Is finding a projection for you. It's never 100%. I can't guarantee that this is what it will look like because things are always changing, right? But the projection shows you the path that you're on. And if you're short in your projection, the chances of you running out of money in retirement is very high. I mean, I'm not saying anything that you haven't heard before, right? And so when we take a look at the biggest mistake people make when it comes to their retirement and when they are put in the predicament of running out of money is that they haven't done any kind of projections. They haven't done any kind of planning. They haven't used any tools. There are some online tools if you don't want to use a financial advisor like me to project for you. You can use online tools. Your 401k sometimes has online tools that you can utilize. Doing some work ahead of time and seeing where your potholes are the best way to avoid them. That's the number one thing you can do, is actually put together a plan, see a forecast, see a projection, and see how you're doing on it. Because if you're short, the chances of you being short in retirement are quite high. I mean, I would imagine they're probably, a lot. So, and the biggest thing after looking at projections, I would say the number two thing that people don't do after not doing a projection or a plan of some kind is telling themselves stories. Stories about how they'll be living more frugally in retirement, how they're not going to be spending as much because maybe their house will be paid off, or their kids are out of school and so they don't have to pay for them, or whatever that situation is. And so these stories that we tell ourselves most likely don't come true. And so when I'm doing planning with a client and I'll get a story, oh, I don't anticipate having to pay for that anymore, or I don't anticipate XYZ. I always say, well, here's the thing. Nobody has ever complained to me about having too much money in retirement. And everybody laughs because it's funny. I think I'm funny. Anyhow. And I say, why don't we just assume that your expenses are going to be the same as they are right now? because then if you do go down in expenses and how much you spend on things, then great, you have extra money. And if you don't and stay at your current level, we at least know that you're set in your plan. That of course is always changing, and it's just a forecast. But we'll see. And most people understand that once we lay it out like that. It stops the storytelling that we tell ourselves. Just like, I always talk about weight loss and things like that because it's always something on the back of my mind. And I always say, women always have their skinny clothes and their, fat clothes and then their medium clothes, right? And we keep those skinny clothes, even if we haven't been able to wear them for 20 years. I have a pair of jeans in there that I haven't been able to wear for 20 years, right? But I keep telling myself the story that once I lose the weight that I want to lose, I'll be able to wear those jeans. But realistically, let's think about this. Realistically, if I lost the weight that I wanted to get into the jeans, are those jeans even going to be jeans I want to wear? Are they in fashion anymore? Are they, got a weird, tint to them? Tint's not the right word, but, a weird pattern on them, or do they have an uncomfortable shape in general? So even if I was stick thin and able to wear them, that I wouldn't want to because the band's uncomfortable or whatever. You have to think about stuff like that. And by just taking that narrative out of the storytelling and just saying where you're at now is where we're going to start your planning is the best way to do that. So if you can stop telling yourself those stories and just say, what I'm spending now is what I'm going to be spending for the rest of my life. And if you want to be extra careful, you could up it. So let's say you're spending $8,000 a month on mortgage, on kids stuff, whatever you're spending it on. Okay, there's no judgment here. Maybe you say, what if I was spending $9,000 a month or $10,000 a month in retirement? That is a really good way to kind of safeguard your retirement planning, because I do tend to think that people think that they're going to be spending X and they actually end up spending Y. And Y could be here. I have had people spend less, but it could be here, it could be here, it could be here, right? Some people spend a lot more in retirement than they do currently because every day is a Saturday. And honestly, people spend a lot of money on Saturday and it's boring. A lot of people are very bored in retirement and they don't have things to really preoccupy themselves. They're always doing stuff, but they're always doing stuff to stop themselves from being bored. And so we tend to spend a lot of money in those cases. So stopping that storytelling is going to be a big thing to avoid. Things that maybe you aren't considering in your planning is inflation. Inflation's a big topic. I'm going to be doing a video on inflation in the grocery store in a little bit, so we'll have more information on that. But inflation can be a big problem. And if people are just thinking in today's dollars rather than at least using historical inflation, which I think is at 2.3 or so, I don't know for sure. Let's say use 2.5 as an easy number, right? Maybe a little high, but that's okay. So use 2.5 and see how your money needs to inflate. What kind of investments are you going to have your money in to combat inflation and to combat how much you're going to withdraw from the accounts? Those are the two things that people don't think about. They don't think about inflation, and they don't think about actually the percentage that they're going to be taking out of the account. So those are two things that people can really consider. And I would say a very good rule of thumb, which is the rule of 4%. I would say you could do higher. 4% might be a little low. Well, actually, I should say 4% might be a little high. Let's put it that way. You might want to do lower. The idea is that essentially how much interest at 4% are you generating on your investments that you're planning to live off of in retirement once that paycheck stops? And at 4%, 4% of your overall investments, what is that number, and is that enough to live off of for the year? Because in that case, you're living off the interest in the growth rather than the principal. So if you have $1 million, is 4% of $1 million after tax, after all of that stuff, right? After tax, is that enough for you to live off of? Okay. Now, people are going to say, well, after tax, that means you're going to be taking out 5 or 6%, possibly, right? So that's why I say you might want to do a lower number like 2% or 2.5% to keep into that idea of, taxes and stuff, depending on where your accounts are held. If they're IRAs and things like that, you do need to think about that stuff. So that's why I say you might want to do less than 4% as your, distribution rate, essentially. I know that gets a little complicated, but it's really important to think of not just how you're putting your money away, but how you're going to take it out. And I think people don't focus on that enough, on how they're going to take their money out. Thinking about expenses coming up that we don't expect, like healthcare expenses, like, bailing out a loved one if something comes up. Losing an income stream, if we're married and we're both bringing in Social Security. I'm going to do a video on that too pretty soon, so watch out for that. And one of us pass away, now we're down to one Social Security. How is that going to affect everything? What is the lifestyle that we've built? Does that mean my expenses come down? You do need to think about that stuff, even though it's sad to think about that, honestly, and we all know that, but it's just reality of life. And if you don't think about it now, you're basically just accepting whatever happens. And I don't like that. I don't like that for people. I want people to at least have had the conversation, thought that through, and seen how that change might make it. Hopefully we all pass away with our spouse holding hands at like 105 or whatever age you decide you want to live till. But is that reality? No, it's not. Unfortunately, there is a chance that one of us is going to outlive the other. And how does that affect your expenses? And how much income you're bringing in versus how much you have to pull from your investments. That's a big problem. Bucket list blowout is another thing that I think people tend to not think about, which is, as I said, every day Saturday. And we all want to just travel and buy this and buy that and get an RV and do all this stuff, right? And it's never one thing. It's always like 15 things we got to do right now. And I get it because, if you're a little older when you retire, let's say you're in your late 60s, you worry that you're not going to have enough time to do what you want to do while you're healthy. We all hear about, poor Sam, a year after he retired, something happened to him and he's not able to do anything, or he passed away or something like that. So people tell, again, a story to themselves that we have to do everything now. And that's not true, right? I hate to say it, but the biggest things that people tell me that, parents or, unfortunately clients and things like that have people who've been on their deathbed have said has not been, I didn't get to go to Rome. It's, I didn't get to spend enough time with my family. I didn't get to, enjoy nature enough. I didn't get that kind of stuff, these experiences with the people we love. I didn't get to have this conversation with XYZ family member that I haven't been talking to. It's stuff like that. We talk about bucket lists and like, what would you regret not ever doing? But really when it comes down to it, it's about our relationships and about the impact we have in the world. Really, that's the most important thing. So just slow it down. Not everything has to be done at once because, again, we're trying to keep in a certain amount of percentage of withdrawal from your event investments. So if you do buy an RV and go on 3 trips, then all of it costs $100,000, probably more if you're buying an RV. Let's say $150,000, right? The first year, and you've saved $1 million. That's way over 4%. I mean, that's breaking the bank kind of over 4%, right? We don't need to do that. And it is a huge impact on your investments and how they do in the future. It's a huge impact. People do not realize that when you take huge chunks of money out at once, it really affects everything. Plus, what is the tax that you're having to pay? You could be creating this like rolling hill, rolling ball down the hill essentially of chaos, because you take that money out, you have all this tax and you have to pay the tax, then now you have to take more money out to pay the tax, and now you have to pay tax the next year on that money. It just can create a problem. So just be aware of how you want to space things out. Maybe even make a calendar for yourself. This year we want to buy the RV and we want to go to Hawaii, and that's it. And then next year we're going to go to Rome and we're going to go to Alaska, and that's it. We tend to just keep saying yes to everything because honestly we're bored in retirement, and that's not a good thing, because the chances of you running out of money are much higher when you do things like that. And then basically, we can go through all these other things, but realistically, just design your ideal future. Understand what you want it to look like. Stop telling yourself stories that make you feel better about yourself. Really think about, what do you want retirement to be? Is it to sit peacefully at home and read a book and tend to your garden and go on hikes locally and that kind of stuff? Or is it going to be big flamboyant trips and RVs and all this stuff? That's a big difference. And the problem that I've seen with certain people I've worked with is that sometimes we plan for a certain amount of income and that just goes flying out the window once they retire. They've forgotten everything we've ever talked about, and they don't want to hear, no, you guys shouldn't be spending that money. They don't want to hear it because it's their money ultimately, right? That's my job, is to tell them the truth, but it's their money ultimately. I'm not going to tell them they can't spend it. And so make sure you have a realistic plan. Understand who you are, right? I don't see myself, we take trips. I'll tell you a little bit about our planning. How's that? We take trips as well. We go, to different places, but we go to one place in particular. I'm not going to necessarily go into where we go, but we go to one place a lot. We kind of know how much it is. We stick within our budget of how much we put aside for those trips for the year. We're not extravagant when it comes to cars. Our housing is pretty much taken care of. So we kind of know where we're going to be. And I know what we do on the weekends is we relax. I don't go spend a ton of money unless it's online, which is not a good thing either, but I don't spend a lot of money. We're not out at the dealership every other week looking at another car. That's just not us. When we're going to spend money is going to be on really trips. And I don't like traveling that much. International travel's a little bit of a pain. So I can't see myself doing that more than a couple of times a year. And we're not big, like, road trip people. We're not, that's just not us. We're not huge at going out to eat all the time and all that stuff. So I have an idea of what I think our retirement's going to look like. We're probably never going to completely retire just because the two of us are going to be bored. We might find other things to do that can keep us occupied, but maybe not keep doing exactly what we're doing now. But realistically, you do need to know who you are. We're not flashy. We're not necessarily the most fun to hang out with when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I know who I am. I know what our money is going to go towards now and in the future. And so because of that realistic viewpoint, I can plan so much better. So if I can give you one thing to take away, really think about, what is your retirement going to look like? What do you truly want to do? What time frame are you going to do it? If you're going to do it in the first 5 years, everything that you ever want to do in the first 5 years, you've got to plan for that. And do a projection. Do a plan. Do some forecasting, and don't just do it once, do it multiple times before you retire. And those two things will help you so much. And it will start to unveil all these other questions, some of which we went through, like distribution rates and all that stuff that I'm sure was really complicated. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, Lisa, which is okay. But just those two things will get you so much farther than the average person who unfortunately will probably run out of money because they didn't do the work ahead of time. So on that solemn note, so happy, right? But if you do the work and look into it a little bit and just do some planning, you can have a fantastic retirement whenever you retire, if you ever retire. Okay, that's a better note to end on. All right, so with that, hopefully you are doing well, you stay strong, you keep your resolve to do what you want to do in your life. Living your best life is always my motto. And we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.